No problem at all.
So good morning and welcome to the Safe Wellbeing podcast with me, Katie, and I am delighted this morning to be joined by Brian Hart of Safe Insure. So Brian, thank you very much for joining me first of all.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
You have been a long time associate member of Safe. I thought it was quite good to incorporate that, with the wellbeing side of things. I think it's important from all different angles. But, for those who don't know you as well as others, who is Brian from Safe Insure?
So I've been working with Safe specifically for 30 years this year. So I met them in 1994. I've been an insurance broker in the insurance industry since 1979. So we won't talk about age, will we? So this has been my longest single working partnership my life. So literally half my entire life has been spent working with Safe and the independent funeral profession, and I've loved every moment of it so far. And I mean so far as well, because the journey continues.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of starting. And it comes on to when I was coming up with these questions, you've been around the industry for a number of years. You've been around it from kind of an outsider, because you're not a working funeral director, even though you represent us in such an important way, because we do need insurance. But have you seen, or have you, especially like Safe EGM weekends, if you've been invited along to different things, how as an industry we've been able to approach wellbeing certainly different in the 30 years that you've had a close working relationship with the independent funeral industry?
That's a really good question. When I started working with Safe, it was a much smaller organisation. And so I think perhaps the 30 years is a really good sort of reflection on the growth and the journey that Safe's come on. But it was, I believe I'm right in saying, it was 5 years after Safe was formed that I started working with them. There was around 430 members of Safe. So it was a smaller organisation in the sense of it was still finding its feet, but its battles were very much with the co-ops of this world. It was very much against what is now Dignity, and then was SCI, the Americans, purchasing a lot of funeral homes. So I saw the battles that, as a new casual observer, I saw the battles that were going on. So it was, Safe had a driven purpose, and the people who were on the executive at the time. From a well-being perspective, that's a difficult one to say, because I think as an outsider, I think we can imagine what it's like to do the role. I'm very fortunate. I count an awful lot of funeral directors as friends, and I've known them for 30 years, and that journey again continues, I'm pleased to say. It's a tough role. I don't think anyone outside of the profession can really truly know what it's like on a day-to-day basis. I'm an insurance broker. I can talk about my well-being. I would say my job is certainly more stressful than it was back in the 90s, partly, I guess, with responsibility, with the changing world we live in. And I think that's got to be reflective of what I've seen in the funeral profession, particularly recently. So I'm all for customer and consumer protection, but I do think it's over egged, as it were, because the funeral profession's seen the CMA report. It's had the issue with the FCA regulation on funeral plan providers, and and that's putting to one side the health and safety regulations that sort of change on a yearly basis, if not more. So I can only look at my world, my business world, and then see how that, if you like, overlays upon the funeral world. And I think it's worse for the funeral profession than it has been for me. And if I'm feeling the heat in the kitchen, as it were, it can only be a lot hotter for the funeral directors.
Yeah, and I think that that sums it up nicely. And I think talking about how you look after your own well-being, because and it was something that I was looking at. You've ran quite a few golf days. I don't know if you know off the top of your head how many you've done over the years, but
Well, it's 30. It was literally just only a week or so ago, we were in Dublin celebrating the 30th anniversary. And actually, that started as an event where we wanted to get to know the people with whom we were dealing. It's really, really important to understand. You guys are very, very hardworking individuals. It's very difficult to take time out of your day. One of the things I was told very early on, which is always stay with me, do not ring a funeral director on a Monday morning. If you are going to ring them at any time, it really should be about 3 or 4 o'clock. You may well get a response at that time, but I've always sort of tried to stay mindful of the pressures that people are under. Yeah, so 30 golf days I've helped to arrange thus far, and obviously I have the pleasure of attending some of the ones that the funeral directors do, and I've done that for a best part of certainly 20 years, I guess. And it's lovely to see funeral directors out of the working environment, because we all have to sort of come up for air and get some sort of perspective if you can. And it's good to spend time. They're all very, very good guys and ladies, so it's lovely.
I think that's it. And I wanted to look at, seeing over the years, in the Safe Insight magazine, we see the photographs, the smiles on everyone's faces, the winners, everybody having a really good time. And, going into that weekend, I think it is a chance for everyone to look after their well-being through golf, as a way of relaxing, as you say, not in that working environment. And it probably is a lot for a lot of people's well-being that participate in it and really come away with it feeling relaxed. They can go back into the environment. But do you find that golf, for example, is something that you like doing? Is it good for your well-being? Are you good at it? I've heard comments about this in the past. That's why I'm putting that.
Anyone who knows me, I am probably and happily quite probably the worst golfer that's ever participated in the Key Cup, as it's now called. I suppose it's quite important to put context into this. I don't play golf. I attend golf days, and my passion is spending time with people. So I play socially with the funeral guys, and that's it. It's all I do. There's been if you like, a collective formed within the group, and so we go and celebrate big birthdays. Some of the guys very kindly came over to Cyprus last year for my 60th. We said we wouldn't talk about age. I've already broken that one. And I've had the pleasure of attending a sort of key mark anniversaries for them as well. For me, it's about time you spend. I like, my passion is walking. So golf actually helps me do one thing. I love walking. I'm not very good at sort of jumping in a buggy and doing that. I'd much rather walk a golf course, look around, take in the surroundings. I love nature, love the great outdoors. And so for me, that sort of allows me to do that. And as anyone else, again, who knows me, I love a good talk. And I love talking to find out about people. And you do find out about people. And we've made friendships. There's business discussed on these golf courses. People ask questions. It's an opportunity for them to ask me things. It could be about claims. It could be about service. It could be about insurance profession. It could be about regulation. It could be about a new opportunity. And so for me, I find that I'm happy to talk about anything and everything that people want to talk about. And if they feel I can be useful, I love that. So golf is a mechanism. I do unwind. You never forget that you're with customers, but you do unwind. You do. And with the golf days, it's always been that added benefit that whilst I'm an appalling golfer, I've always used my sort of role within that to act as what's called the fine master, to derive some money from people for the president's charities. So that's, if you like, been my trade-off, and people seem to tolerate me being able to do that. So I'll take that as a compliment.
You should take that as a massive compliment. I want to touch on a point there that you said about, talking. You love talking, getting to know people, you're very open. How important as a male to another male is talking and being open nowadays, in terms of, if a male is going through struggles, you know, especially someone within the industry, you know, being able to talk to someone that's not in the industry as well. And I think that's a good kind of, I'm pretty sure you've had conversations on the golf courses about things that are between men, but how important is it now more than ever?
I think it is more now than ever. We talked about age. I come from a generation. We didn't talk. We didn't talk. My family didn't talk particularly about things. We didn't open up on how we were feeling. We didn't talk about. We didn't actually say how we felt. Deep down, we always. My late father, who I absolutely adored, a wonderful man. He would always use the words in response to anything. I'm fine. I'm not too bad. They were the words he always used.
Yeah.
And they were not the words, you know, he was under a lot of pressure with work and stuff, and growing up in the 70s, it was a difficult time with high inflation. He had to work abroad. He was a carpenter. I didn't see him from one year to the next because of the working environment in the UK. It was tough, but we didn't talk. Now it's really, I'm pleased to say that you know, the pendulum has swung, and we now do talk about things. I couldn't possibly go into obviously any personal detail or recite any personal circumstances, but you know, I've got close to a lot of the guys, and I feel comfortable opening up to them about how I feel, and a lot of them, not all, and I think it's about respect and understanding that there's got to be some distance provided. People either move closer to you or they stay their distance, and either is fine. What you also really want to just say to people is, look, I'm there. If I can help, I will help. I always think that that's it's a blessing, or it's certainly no curse to be able to help people. You know, we talk about the closeness of the trade association and the like, but for me, it's a lot more than that. These are deep felt friendships, and I care what people are going through, and if I can help, or even if I can't say anything or do anything, can just sort of, you know, give them a smile or put an arm around a shoulder. Sometimes that's enough. And we were talking about golf. I mean, it's a very sad circumstance that happened over this weekend with a professional golfer in America, sadly taking his own life. And you know, on the face of it, a successful player who would seem to have had everything the world at his feet. I think that shines a very, very bright light on, you know, money, trappings of success. You know, it would seem that at 30 he had everything in front of him, but clearly the man needed a lot more support and help, and it was sad that it led him to take his own life. And yeah, these things serve as a notices to us all, really, about our own mental health.
Yeah, and you know, opening up to someone like you've shared there, and you've confided in them, how does it then make you feel? Do you feel a sense of relief? Do you feel that you're getting something off your chest? Do you feel that it's helping your own well-being by just being able to not consume it all inside?
Again, a very good question. I always feel better. I use the phrase vent, and I've done that for years, where I've always felt whatever I'm feeling, if it's anger, frustration, usually with an insurance company, but whatever I'm feeling, I'm always better if I vent that out. Try not to do it in front of people. Try not to, but it's better expressed. Personally, I mean, I've benefited from the confidences I've had with friends in the funeral profession who I've known for years, and they've been able to reassure me that they've got my back, and they've listened. And sometimes it's what I thought was a rational fear or a rational concern that would sort of engulf me, and they've been there to unravel that for me, so I can see a little clearer in terms of how it truly was. So, and I think hopefully I've been able to do the same for others. It's important never to judge. Really, really important never to judge. Just be there. Just listen. if they want advice, caution it by saying these are just my thoughts, but I've definitely benefited from opening up and speaking about it. And I genuinely would urge absolutely anyone who's got any concerns, don't hold on to those. Find someone. There are people who are out there to help you, hopefully close friends and family. But if not, there are more professional organizations as well. So I think I always take a view, people are ultimately decent people. There are exceptions, of course. But ultimately, the people you surround yourself are decent people, and they've got your welfare, they've got your best interests at heart. So be open, be honest, speak your mind, and usually the path becomes clearer.
I think that sums it up, really well. And coming back to the point of regulation, especially CMA, FCA, becoming licensed, that's going to be coming across Scotland, and then England, Wales following suit. And from your insurance background, with plenty of regulation that goes on within your industry, how do you switch off from the ever-changing rules, from the updated rules, from the changes that are then flung upon you as an insurance broker? How do you deal with those challenging struggles and the lessons that you've learned that as the funeral industry now is going through all of these currently and into the next few years? How do you switch off from that? How do you deal with that stress?
That's not very well, would be the honest answer sometimes. I try and focus on the timings at the FCA, for example. So I'm subjected to the FCA and its predecessors, which was FSA, and before that the GISC, General Insurance Standards Council. So regulation's been part of my world for probably best part of 30 years or so. I think the first thing to say, I don't have a problem with regulation. I believe that people should be protected. There are, I'm afraid, too many stories of people who've been let down, not just insurance, but across the piece. So that's the starting point. So I think if I rationalize it and compartmentalize these things, do I think regulation's a good idea? Yes, I do. And I would transpose that from a personal point of view into the funeral profession. Do I think that the funeral profession, the people we entrust our loved ones to, the funeral directors who are undertaking that, should be regulated to perform those tasks? The answer is yes, but that's through training, education, qualifications, and so on. So I'm a fan of that, in the same way that all the monies that we receive, they're all protected. I cannot touch any of my client monies. I'm very comfortable with that, or the insurance companies get that straight away, direct. Moving that on, how do we sort of work that? Well, the regulations are mine are a bit higher with FCA, so I have a number of pinch points throughout the year. So I won't go into all of them, but essentially it's August and February. I have to ensure that we do a specific. So I know I've now disciplined myself to say, right, I'm going to do all that work that's necessary for the FCA on that. It's a lead in, and it's about a 2-3 week period, which involves myself, my accountants, gathering all the information. There's no surprise anymore. It's coming. I know about it. I'll devote that time. I also worked out that I consider myself a good insurance broker. I'm qualified, and I've got a lot of experience. But regulation, there are entities and businesses out there whose job is to look at the regulation. So I've engaged with consultants. So the first year I did all the returns to the FCA myself, and it was without doubt the worst period I can remember. It just took up all my time, and you're juggling other things in your life, working life as well. So for me, the best decision I made was to say, I am going to subcontract out all the regulation that I can to an expert external company. They'll do all that for me. They'll do the return. I have to do still some of the prep work. I still have to provide them with accountancy figures and such. but I'll subcontract most of that out. That's the best thing I've done, because whilst I'm not 100% removed from it all, and I'm still the approved person, it is a mind, it's a weight off my mind. They guide me through everything to make sure I'm not falling foul of the FCA and the deadlines. So that has helped me enormously by structuring that part. It can't be avoided. That's the reality. There's things we have in life we can say we will opt out of that. No, I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that. This is something I'm afraid that's not going to go away. And with the regulation coming in, I worry a little bit about the funeral profession, in the sense of I don't agree. It's a personal view. I think that the funeral plan companies needed to be regulated in terms of making sure that the money there was safeguarded. I was not a fan, am not a fan of the funeral directors being regulated as part of that. I do not consider that a necessary thing. I've looked after SAFE's professional indemnity insurance for 30 years, and 30 years we have never ever seen a claim or a notification against a funeral director for funeral plan sales at all. Anyone holding client money, absolutely. Anyone not, personally, I think it's unnecessary, a burden upon funeral directors to worry about being appointed representatives for making arrangements as part of the plan. I don't think the FCA are remotely concerned as to whether Mrs. Smith wants an oak coffin or a teak coffin or whatever it be, and whether they want 1 limo, 2 limos, and newspaper notices. It's a crazy thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that sums it up really well. So, being planning it out, being organised for the 2 parts of the year that that's when it's coming around, and essentially, going to that external company, sort of asking for help, taking a huge burden off, kind of looking at where your strengths are or where the workload and everything like that. That was essential for where you are to this point today. So for anyone listening, there is availability, options and advice out there. In your vast experience across the last 30 years, where you've had all these different regulations and all these different things ahead of us as an industry, could be really key for anyone listening to ensure that, in the way you were talking about, if I take my funeral director hat off and I put my wellbeing mental health coaching hat on, the way that you were talking about that there, you were very relaxed, more relieved and stress-free that you had taken those steps to, as you say, it allowed you to get some time back. And obviously time within our profession as a funeral director is very difficult at times because it's a lifestyle. And I just wanted to share that that's a key takeaway that I've taken away from that there, that you've gained some sense of your own well-being back. And I think it comes on to the next point of, the importance of your well-being today as the individual that is Brian, to ensure that you can be insurance broker Brian. How important is that for you today?
I fell into insurance at the age of 16. I never wanted to be an insurance broker, and there were, I'm sure, the same with. I always reminded of the story of Matthew Gallagher, and Matthew never wanting to be a funeral director and sort of coming back into it later in life, wanting to be a teacher, and this great desire to sort of pass on to the next generation. I've always loved that kind of story, and I never wanted to, as I say, and I kind of found myself. I did okay at school, and so with the story I was telling about my father being away, I was able to contribute to the household, and that made, probably at the age of 16 and 2 months. I didn't do 6 A levels, didn't go to college, university, or any of those things. I went straight into work at the age of 16. And my dad just said, "You're never going to be working on a building site. You're not cut out for it." He said, "Use that brain." And he just said banking or insurance. And that's where I ended up. And I was always planning my outs, always planning it. And about 25, I think, 24, maybe better, 23, 24, there was a cathartic moment where I helped someone. I was in the first time I was doing menial jobs for years, but it was just all part of the learning. Different world today. but it was all part of the learning. You went through a very detailed learning curve. And I helped someone. I remember it was like my light bulb moment. And I thought, I think I could be quite good at this. And then people saw things in me and they made me an underwriter and trained me to be an underwriter. And having become an underwriter, I found that actually I saw risk and I saw businesses and I saw the variety of different things in a way that I thought and others thought made me a good fit for being an underwriter and then a broker. And I've never really looked back. I've the thing for me is getting claims paid, sorting out cover. But people have not got the right cover, being the problem solver. That's always been the thing that, if you like, lights the fire for me. I want to be seen as the person who makes it right, holds insurers to account, guides people as to the cover they need, or indeed guide people to the cover they don't need. And it's always been. My dream was to join the Royal Navy, see the world. I'm kind of doing it in reverse. I'm now 60. I'm kind of, I don't think I'm going to be giving this up. But what I will do is probably in a fair few years from now, health willing, is go and do a bit more traveling, but sort of do it the other way now. Sort of do it towards the twilight years, the silver years. Yeah. Or whatever's left of it now. So it's those moments. I do intend to do a bit of traveling, but for me, it's I won't leave this, and I certainly won't. I won't leave Safe Insure whilst everything's still working intact and the passion's there. For me, this has all been about Safe. Really, it was always leading to that moment, even if I didn't know it when I started in 1979. Because Safe, I often refer to it as my baby. It's such a wonderful organisation full of wonderful people who do the very, very best for us in the worst of times. And I look up to the funeral profession. I said it at the AGM in March, and it's true. I look up to the profession of gentlemen and ladies that work here. It's amazing people.
I think that's special, and I want to come back to a point you said, like your passion and relighting that's ignites your fire, of insurance. So a claim and people getting cover. If the problem solver that I'm reading between the lines of this, if you weren't able to find that solution, like the claim gets sorted or the cover, how would that affect you?
That's again a very good question. Depends on the reasoning. There's nothing worse than telling someone that something isn't covered. That could be a reason. It could be someone young was driving a car and we didn't know about them. It could be that there's a flood, but actually it's a lack of maintenance. It's not an insured peril. They're the worst moments that we have because we're passing on bad news. Now that's second nature in a far worse way for funeral directors in terms of having to deal with the ramifications of loss and grief and all that sort of suffering. But it's the worst thing that we end up having to do. I like getting claims paid for people. That's why you pay premium. You expect claims to be paid. As long as it can be explained rationally, and the reasons why a claim can't be paid, I'm okay with that. I'm okay because if I can explain it and see it within myself. I'm afraid we live in a world where insurance companies, and I used to work for one for a number of years, good number of years, they were quite amenable. We used to have a thing called ex gratia claims, and that got used quite a bit actually, where the intention was for the policy to pay, and that could have fallen foul because of, I don't know, a technical breach of a condition or something is a little bit grey at the edges. And insurers generally would pay. They won't pay now. They really, really won't pay. And I think that kind of got brought to the fore with the COVID situation, with a lot of insurers being taken to court by the FCA themselves. I mean, you couldn't make that up. That the regulator takes a great number of insurers to court to get them to force them to pay out on COVID claims. I find that remarkable that the people who write the wordings did not know the wordings well enough to pay out a claim and needed to be dragged to court to do so. I think that shines a light very, very poorly. I used to call my business, we used to call it a profession, in the insurance profession. It's a chartered insurance institute. I'm a member, I've been a member for, I guess, best part of 30 years or so. I'm afraid I don't see it in the same way as I see the funeral profession, which is full of insurance funeral professionals. And that's another reason I advocate for the regulation of becoming a funeral director. So I would up the regulation there, but only so that you qualify and pass to trade as funeral directors, not necessarily. Certainly wouldn't be doing the FCA regulation, and the CMA can disappear as well. A lot of it, I think it's unnecessary. I really do.
Yeah, a lot of us that would agree with that. But I wanted to finish, and ask you if there anyone listening to this on anything that, in conversation that we've had, any advice, any tips or any messages for anyone that, from Brian to whoever is listening, that you could share that may help them in regulation steps or how to look after themselves for all this demand and stress that are upon and the pressures, and to just be themselves.
Yeah. I think the only thing I could really say is the thing that I've always found, but it's a personal thing, is to not dwell. Don't let it fester. Things that fester will develop further. They become bigger. They become more complex. And we can overthink things and talk to people. There are an awful lot of people out there. It could be business. It could be personal. It could be something for the medical profession. It could be something for your best friend. There's no right. There's no wrong. But the answers undoubtedly lie out there. And I think with regulation, don't let it overwhelm you. Don't let it overwhelm you. Just have it structured. If you can offset that to people, make it so it's not all on you. That's a very, very good thing, because there's so many facets to it. Some of it's financial, some of it's regulatory in terms of legal obligations. Just offset as much as you possibly can. You may have to end up being the receptacle for it, but that doesn't mean you need to take on 100% of the pressure and all the work attached to it. So spread it as much as possible. You'll find actually what you're also doing is a favor for those people, because ultimately these are, if it's perhaps the coming generation, these people are going to have to face that. Far better to have, if you like, done some teaching and some guidance, so that they're not actually sort of dropped in at the deep end when that moment comes. I think we're all much better talking about things and dealing with things collectively than feeling as though we have to take everything on ourselves. I'm particularly bad at this in some ways. I'm very good at saying it, not always good at doing it. And I think that's I do think actually that's a lot of how I was brought up. But times have changed, and so don't be like me. Be more sort of adventurous. Be more modern in terms of thought, and share the load, and don't take it all on yourself.
I think that sums it up really well, and a good point to finish on there, Brian. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been fantastic.
You're very, very welcome, Katie.